Hello everyone, and this is the second video of the Unity Photon networking tutorials. And last video, what we did, we set up Photon Pun and the optional Visual Studios help, you could say, to external tools. And today we will actually start on the menu system. So first, what we're gonna do is let's just make a canvas because that's definitely what we're gonna need. And I've already imported TextMesh Pro stuff, so if you do want to use those, because I recommend it, because they're extremely better quality than normal UI. So then I created a canvas, and then I'm just going to create a panel as our main background, and I'm just going to make it black for now. And for those who want to change a different color, you can use these slidey wheels. And if you want to make it opaque or different levels of transparency, you use the RGBA, the A function that makes it how opaque it is. And I'm just going to use fully opaque because I feel like if they're partially transparent, that does not look good. So now we just have this black screen. And now so what I was thinking was that I was going to make a single player button and a multiplayer button. And I'll tell you when that happens. So basically, first what we're going to do is get a button, a TextMesh Pro button, and this is called single player. And inside here, we can just maybe move it up here. You can change where you want to put it. And it's also recommended to actually remove the background because that makes it kind of curve at the end, so that's better. And now we can just go inside here, grab the text, and just rename it to single player space. And then that's going to be your single player button. And next, what we can do, you can change around the size if you want. And you can just press duplicate and just move it down here. I'm only going to make a really simple UI for these tutorials since it's more about Photon. And then this one can be multiplayer, so multiplayer. So now what we can do is make a script to make a single player and multiplayer actually work. So I've already gone ahead and make a scripts folder if you want to do that real quick. It's always easy to be organized. After we can press create, C# script, and just name it something important. Make sure not to name it game manager, or else it's just gonna give you an actual game manager. So I'm just gonna name it setup, you could say. I'm just gonna name it setup. You can name it whatever you want. And then if you open that up in Visual Studios, so I do have the add-on for the external tools, so it does give me suggestions. If you don't have that or you want that, you can go back and you can check out the first tutorial and check out that optional part at the end. So after Visual Studio is loaded, what we're going to do is we're just going to add a quick using Photon for that extra space. So using photon.pun, which gives us we can use Photon now, and another one in advance, photon.realtime. Photon.pun again, real time. And then another thing we have to change is its model behavior to model behavior pun callbacks, or else some functions will be called. So these two are mandatory, or these three, sorry. And now we can just delete the void start and update functions because we won't need them. And now what we can do is just so we're going to do the multiplayer and single player first. So what we can do now is also add another using Unity engine.scene management. What this does is that it can allow us to change between scenes, so like going between game mode and menus, which we're definitely going to need. And so what we can do now is we're just going to make another public because we want to be accessible by the button. So a public void, and it's just going to be called single player. Okay, spelled single wrong. And now all we have to do in here is just if you already have a game scene ready or you're just going to make one in the future, then all you have to do is scene manager.load scene. Scene manager.load scene. And in this here, we're going to put the scene index, which is, I'm going to show you real quick where that is. So I'm just going to put the 1 because I know that's right. So now it's going to be different depending on how much scenes you have. So you got to look at this part. So if you just quickly press, okay, it's compiling right now. So after you finish, if you quickly press Control-Shift-B, that'll open up the build settings. And then what that would do is it will, and then you have to add all your scenes into it. So you have to add all your scenes regardless of this, because unless you're not going to switch between scenes, or you're not going to build it and missing a few scenes, then you got to do that. After build settings should look something like this. At start, if you didn't do anything, it should just be empty. So you can just quickly drag in the menu scene and your game scene, and then you see that there's a number over here. If you're dragging the game scene, obviously there's 2 scenes, and that number would be 1, and then 2, and then 3, and 4, and on and on and on. So you gotta find, so whatever number you want to open, whatever your game scene is, then you insert that number into the place that we saw right here. So that number right here, add that. Cool. And I also seem to have, okay, there, that's good. 9.6. Okay, seem to have a little problem. I'll try to figure it out later. Okay, so now since we have done single player, we're going to also do multiplayer, except this time it's going to be different because Photon, we need to use connecting to the main server. We have to do a lot of stuff with the joining rooms, the creating rooms, a lot of those stuff. So we're going to do multi. You can just call it multi since I don't want to collide with anything. And instead of loading the scene, what we're going to do is we're going to do Photon network dot connect using settings. And what this does is that it just connects us to the server, so we can start playing with the user. And this and if you're just doing multiplayer, this is not multi, but it has to be like awake or something like that. Awake, start, any of those. It has to be one of the first components, or if this isn't done first before anything else, then you're gonna get a lot of errors, because before you can do anything in Photon, or at least most of the stuff in Photon, you have to at least be connected to the master server, else it won't work. I'll try figuring it out later. So now after the multi, what we can do, so this is still multiplayer, what we can do is make an on-connected to master. So this is a public override. It has to be an override. Override void. It's going to be on connected to master. It's over here. Connected to master. Like this. Has to be spelled exactly the way this is. And then inside here, we're going to just do a Photon network dot automatically synchronize. So it's just be automatically automatically synchronize scene. So, and then we're just gonna set that equals to true. I'm not gonna be covering lobbies or anything, so this is just gonna be a basic tutorial. So if you want to do lobbies or something, then you're just gonna have to find out the tutorial. Sorry, I might actually do it later, maybe, but we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. What this does is just make sure that we're on the scene correctly, and it syncs the scene. So this is also very important. And the next thing now is basically we can go back to our UI now. It's really fine. We still can't do anything because it still doesn't do anything. So after this, we're going to set up our menus and everything. So normally you can use script. We still have that error. I'll try figuring that out. We still have usually you would make a script for that, but I'm just going to use the version where if you press a button, it just finds it and then it just either enables it or disables it, and that's fine really. So what you can do now is just go to the single player, and I'm actually going to rename this to multiplayer because I don't want to get confused. And then in the on click button, which just says when you click it, this happens, we're at a new one and we're going to drag in, actually we're going to go to our main, and first we're going to add our setup script to it. And then we're going to go back to single player and drag in our main, or wherever you put your setup script. Empty right now, so we'll just since I've made a prefab. Okay, so now what you're supposed to do, the unnecessary thing, was to go to the single player button or the multiplayer, your choice. Add a new component and drag in the main, And in a function, we're going to set up, and then we're going to go to let me just void. So we're just going to go into setup, and what we should see is okay, never mind that. I figured out the problem. Turns out it was that I forgot a semicolon at the end of that. That's important. So if we just go back, it should work now. Okay, so once again, after that little bit conclusion, we can go back to single player and make sure you have the main dragged in, or else it can't find the setup script or whatever script that you named it. And then inside here, if we just go back down to the bottom again, then function setup. Yes, here we go. You can see there's a lot more options this time because we spelled real time correctly. And we're gonna do, since this is single player, we're gonna do single player, and then that's all we have to do. Same thing for a multiplayer, except we have to drag in the main. And then once again, this is gonna be multi instead of single player, so multi. And that's really all that's left. So now let's just get the next part of our UI finished. So what we can do is that we're just gonna have a lot of panels, if you guys don't mind. We're just gonna duplicate it. And this one can be called our multiplayer title. And then if we just quickly just hide this panel, it's the exact same panel because we still have these two buttons. So now we can rename this. So instead of single player, this can be join room. This is gonna be our join room button. If we just open it up, same thing. Change this to join room. Once again, I'm only making a simple UI. So if you want to make something more complicated, of course you can switch it around, change the colors if you want. And this one can be called multiplayer create room. And we're gonna add a third button. And then in the text, we're just gonna write create room. And now let's actually get these buttons working. Working, you say. So first, let's just go back to our setup script. So we have it open. Yep. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna make the join room first. So what we can do is a public void join room. Join room. And inside it's gonna be room info, which is basically just info for the room. This is from Photon. And we're just gonna name it room info, lowercase. And I forgot, this has to be, actually no it doesn't. Okay, yeah. So now what we can do inside here is just do a Photon network and .join room. And you can probably guess by the name what it does. So info.name. So let me just quickly explain what this does. So what this does is just, okay, I spelled that wrong. What this does is that it goes here, it gets a room info, which is part of Photon, and then after it does that, it goes to Photon network. It's going to make a new room, and it's going to get our variable, not room info, so lowercase .name. So it's going to find a room using the room info.name. So we're going to input a name here next time. And that's really just how you join a room. We're going to trigger that from another script, and I'll tell you how to do that. And now let's just go to create room. So we just make a public void create room. And inside here, because we want to be able to customize and not just name it 1, 2, 3 or random.range. So we're going to make actually an input field for our name of the room. So we're going to make a public TMP. Oh yes, using this, we have to go to top. And another using TMP Pro. Don't forget that one this time. Underscore input field. That's how you spell it. And we'll just name it room name input. And what this does, it will just make an input for the room. So now in the public void create room, back here, what we're gonna write is because we want to make sure that we have a name. So if there's no name, then it's just going to create a random number. So what we're going to do is just going to do a string that is null or empty. So this is a pretty good thing. Is null empty, and another parentheses, the room name input dot text. So what this does, it just detects if the input is different. Actually, that's a capitalized M. Sorry. It just detects if there is absolutely nothing in it. It's a blank space, just a blank space, nothing in it, and we haven't filled it in. Then we're just gonna do. Then we're just going to do room name input dot text equals to random dot range. Okay, I can't spell range. We're gonna do 1 to 1000. We can say. So now it will automatically generate a 1 to 1000 number. Okay, and then that will just be at the end. That'll just be dot to string and parentheses. And then that should be converted to a string. Okay, so now what this does is that if the string is null or empty, so if it's empty or hasn't been filled in, it will automatically set it to a random number in between 1 and 1000. But now if it's not, and then, oh yeah, we also have to return, because we're going to actually make the room if we actually have an input. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make a Photon network dot create room. So this is another function by Photon, and it's going to be the room name input dot room name input dot text, comma dot text. So now if this is false, so if this is false and we have something inside, we're gonna move on. If it is true, then we're just gonna stop here. And then what we can do is, actually no, we actually don't need that because we need to create the room anyway. So now what we can do is a Photon network dot create room with the room name input dot text, and that's it for creating rooms. And next what we can do is a multiplayer start game. So all I have to do really is just grab this if you want, just copy that, name this game start, and it can load scene number 1. It's basically the exact same thing. Yeah. So next what we need to do is on room creation failed. So this is something that is just for testing. If this doesn't work, then we gotta do this. So it's gonna be a public override void. It's gonna be on create room failed, and Photon has this method already generated. And if this happens, then we're just gonna do debug dot log error that says failed to join room. And speaking of that, we should probably want to get to connect to master, which just tells us when we are fully connected. We're also going to put a debug.log that says connected, and then that tells us that we are connected. Next, what we can do is, yeah, I think that's almost it for the create room. And we'll just have to start creating we'll just fix this error first. Line 22, and oh yes. So now let's actually start making the UI for everything. So first what we can do is inside this normal panel, if we press multiplayer, what it's also going to do is it's also going to move us and enable this. So we can just grab in this title, and we can do game object dot set active, and it's going to be true. And it's going to be starting out with false because it's not going to be seen. And yeah. So first, if we have a multiplayer.create room, what we're going to do is that we're going to create another panel. Yes. So if we just go here, duplicate, instead of title, it's going to be multiplayer create room. And then inside, instead of a join room, you just hide this one here too.
Close menu
and then what
button,
we can do
and
now,
what you'll notice is that
yeah, so after that happens, what you can do is we don't, so we can just disable that. We already did. So now instead of having that button, we can have this button over here and move maybe like over here, we could say. And this would be create a room. And just not to get confused with it, we're just gonna name this create instead of create room. We can just write create. And then for join room instead, it's gonna make another leave. So back, you could say. Back. And inside there can be just back or leave, depending on what you want. Okay. And then you can, if you want, you can just find the right one. So I'm just gonna grab this position dot y, and I can just do that. 189 there. 189 there. Now it's straight. And now what we need now is now an input field to get our room name. We're gonna make a TextFlex Pro input field, and this can be called our room name. And that can be there, that's fine. You can always make it bigger or so. And now if we go back to main, we should, oh yeah, we haven't set it up yet. We haven't saved it yet. So now that's pretty good. So if we go back to this place, what we should do is set up the multi, that's right. And we seem to have created this in the actually wrong script. So let's just quickly, nope, that's right. Now we have to change these a little bit because you don't want them to make them connect to multiplayer again. Instead of multi, what we're going to do is, we actually haven't got there, so we're just going to drag in our multiplayer create room, and then we're going to do the game object dot set active is equals to true, and also what we have to do is grab our own panel and set that to false. We grab that title in there. Function game object dot set equals false. And same thing with this one. If we press multiplayer, set the multi, and then what we have to do is grab our own panel. And game object dot set active equals false. And then that sets down our panel. And by default, this should be off. So once again, we just do that. And now let's just go back to our script. So now what we have here is a pretty okay start for a script. So next what we can do is actually get everything moving, you could say. So after you create, so let's just save this real quick. Let's save this, no errors. Go inside here, and we just press, and we just wait for it to compile. Okay, so after it compiles, what we can go is go into main again because you have to fill in stuff, make actually creating rooms, and we have a room name input, and we just grab our room name and just drag that in. And finally, what we can do here is in create room, what we can do is grab, okay, that's good. Instead of setup, it's going to be created room, it's going to be create room, and that's just going to create the room. In the back, it's just going to basically be not that, it's just going to close this and go back to the title. We can just go game object dot set active equals false. We can add another one for our title, and we can do game object dot set active equals true. And that's really the same thing, really. So now if we just try to test out our menu system so far, if we do create a room, it won't get us anywhere. So yeah, but we'll just see if our menu system works first. So if we just quickly just let it load. So now we have this thing, and we're just going to go multiplayer because we don't have a scene ready for it. If we press multiplayer, now we go to our menu. You can see that it's enabling and disabling correctly. If we just so now you can see that we are now connected, and that's what we want. Press create room. We go in fine. If we just add, oops, okay, that's just a little glitch from Unity. That's fine. If we just quickly add, maybe name it explosion videos. When we press create, it would create a room, but we're not there yet. So we have to actually get to a create room menu. So first, let's just do that. So if we just, what we're gonna do is just duplicate this again, of course. And this time we don't really need to choose a few things. All we have to do is delete that. You don't need it. We do need a back button, and this time the create room can be different. So if we just quickly enable this so we can see it, this can be maybe the room menu. So the room menu. And then inside here, instead of create room, this is the start game. So it can just be start. The TMP text inside can just be play or start or whatever you want to call. And then this time, instead of when we get to the start place, instead of this, we're gonna write setup dot, where is it? Game start, right? Game start, and that's gonna start our game. Back is gonna be slightly different, but all we have to do is drag in a different one. So instead of closing that one, it's gonna close off that one. Game object dot set active is equals to false, and this time it's gonna set that the title menu is still gonna be the same. And now we're getting to a complicated part of actually listing the rooms, which is what we're gonna do next time. So see you in the next video.